I'm Arthur Gaudette. I have over 50 years in the transit industry. I started as a cleaner and fueler, moving up through the ranks to general manager on multiple transit systems. Starting my consulting firm in 1987, I ended up specializing in service planning and scheduling. With that experience, and thinking about many of the fine people I have worked with over the decades, I am a firm believer in coming up through the ranks. Certainly that's not the only way to enter and progress through the business, but I will note that in the 1970s, the president of one of the premier transit management companies had started his career as a water boy, bringing water to the track gangs of a streetcar company. By the 1970s, that company had many general managers who had started as bus drivers. One of the finest people I have worked with got his start as a streetcar motorman in Dayton, Ohio in the 1930s. His knowledge and experience over the decades was valuable to our industry. Seeing a need, I've written 2 books, Improving On-Time Performance in the Transit Industry, a practical guidebook, and Managing the Scheduling Function, a guide for transit executives. Before I get into some thoughts about the job of the scheduler, let me plant a thought for the transit managers watching this. We have been suffering from a transit vehicle operator shortage since long before COVID. Another one of my videos gives my thoughts on creative, if not daring ways to address the shortage. One idea I presented is to emphasize the chance for upward advancement, promoting from within to operator candidates as part of the recruiting process. Let me stretch that out. What if, fairly early in the hiring process, we gave potential hires information on the jobs, thus the title of this presentation, A Career in Transit. We gave them information on jobs to which they may be able to advance. Now, the military has aptitude tests. That probably is not appropriate for our industry, but certainly using advancement opportunities to the point they really will exist may be a decent and appropriate lure. Contrary to popular perspective, the scheduler is not the geek in the back room mumbling about numbers. Omitting capital costs, and without a full mathematical analysis of National Transit Database statistics, arguably 70 to 80% of system costs go to operations and maintenance. As controller of the driver's work schedule, the run cut, arguably the scheduler is responsible for 70 to 80% of that value. By the way, speaking of the National Transit Database, NTD, if the scheduler does not provide and maintain adequate and accurate information, the system will find its federal grant money is at risk. So, from some perspectives, perhaps the scheduler could be seen as one of the most essential people on the property. The scheduler drills down to the arcane detail. The planning department can use broad numbers and concepts to design service. For systems that have had a consultant do a system redesign, many have seen that moderately broad brush stroke, broad concepts, and even, hell, this should be pretty close. The scheduler takes those concepts and drills down, drills down to make sure there is adequate and accurate running time between time points. Make sure there is adequate recovery time. The scheduler examines transfer connections so passengers can complete their trips efficiently. He or she is a servant to passengers, an essential element into how they are able to use transit to fill their needs. The scheduler determines how many buses are needed on the street, not in theory. Then, the scheduler determines how to use buses efficiently. vehicle blocking. Finally, the run cut, the operator's work schedule, keeping in mind both detailed pay costs and trade-offs that satisfy operators as much as possible. Another way to say that is that the scheduler could look only at pure pay cost, details such as guarantee time, overtime, and spread time. But if they do that, there's a great chance that saving money there will cause poor morale that could lead to turnover and absenteeism. A good, experienced scheduler will look at and argue for addressing system costs with a holistic view. This suggests that investment in time and experience, not to mention training, is worth it. From a management perspective, that high demand for schedulers around the country also suggests that the best way for a transit system to have a good scheduler is to promote and develop from within. It also suggests that training multiple people, developing bench strength, is a good practice. Good management makes sure that the organization does not rely on only one person. If they become ill or leave, there should always be somebody that can step into their shoes. Acknowledge that while they are then assets for the specific transit system, they are also future assets for our industry. One current CEO started her career on a small 6 or 8 bus property. As her career advanced, she spent time in the scheduling department of a much larger property. She is now the CEO of a major multimodal system where her knowledge of scheduling and understanding of costs is a major asset. So why not become a scheduler? Yes, it is scary from the outside. Math is involved. There are so many moving parts, it's hard to conceive of how that could possibly put together. I do crossword puzzles. I don't have a clue how they can possibly put together. Now, in a few minutes, we'll talk about training that is available. But remember, everything we have done in life is a series of new events, learning and undergoing training. Learning how to drive a car, how to drive a bus, learning to cook, learning how to saw lumber, learning how to sew clothing. Learning happens one step at a time. Knowledge and experience build step upon step until we finally become skilled and experienced. Stated differently, if someone else can do the task, isn't it likely that you can as well? The scheduler also needs good communication skills, the ability to not just be creative, but open to suggestions and ideas from others. Further, it's important not to be one-sided, my way or the highway because I'm right. Running a transit system is a team sport. Consider again the impact our work as schedulers has not only on the organization, but on the people we serve. Who are the people we serve? The passengers. We also serve passengers by being of service to the operators who directly serve the passengers. Schedulers are also an essential element in good stewardship of public funds. Here's an example of a scheduler's thinking. I mentioned earlier drilling down to the arcane detail and determining how many buses are really needed on the street. Now, example has 2 bus routes that both leave from the same central location. One alternative we have could be to run each route independently requiring 2 buses. Another alternative that will be seen by a scheduler who looks at the detail could be that if we shift the departure time of one of those bus routes by only 10 minutes, we are able to save 1 full bus and 2 full drivers over the course of a service day. Now, computer scheduling software may be able to come up with the same solution, but it would have to be programmed to allow interlining, in which case you might see unwanted consequences elsewhere. So here, the scheduler's creativity, seeing that minor shift is necessary, and I refer to it as the scheduling dance, moving backward and forward as one decision echoes and abounds with others. That scheduling dance here would allow the saving of 1 bus, 2 operators during the service day, and I will suggest that's quite a bit of money. Now, that's not going far enough. Consequences have to be considered. If connectivity with the other bus routes is extremely important, this may not work. However, if these routes have to have connectivity within themselves, they have perfect connectivity because passengers stay on the same bus. We're not done yet. The scheduler will also realize that those passengers remaining on the bus, if they are not counted properly, would reduce the NTD unlinked ridership statistic. So, he or she will ensure that they are counted properly as left on board downtown so as to not affect those ridership statistics. Now, let's talk about costs. In the year 2017, the nationwide average system cost was $131.60 per hour for the bus mode. Quite often, finance and management will use that broad cost to forecast the costs of adding and deleting service. The scheduler, however, realizes that that is not a valid approach. We need detail. The scheduler will look at the 3-part cost model. Now, in the 3-part cost model, the $131 an hour includes management salaries, utilities, and other overhead. In our 3-part cost model, that's allocated to the number of peak buses. Schedulers and planners really don't care about that number. We care about the other 2, cost per hour and cost per mile. That provides the detail of how changes really impact system cost. If an hour of service is added, by slowing down, maybe extending our cycle times, and mileage doesn't change, the cost of that service change may be only $50 or $60 for the added or subtracted hour. If a route is extended, but within existing cycle times, the added mileage is the only cost change, and maybe that's $2 or $3 a mile. By the way, this is one of the topics covered in my book, Managing the Scheduling Function, A Guide for Transit Executives. The book was written in part for transit CEOs that come from other industries or had other career tracks in transit. Over my career, I have met several CEOs that were not using the assets and creativity of the scheduling department as the major resource that it really is, so the book provides insights on how to use that asset better. There are a couple of ways to determine how many operators are needed. One I've seen is that the finance department uses some kind of mysterious mathematical formula applied to the budget. Now, the budget originally was based on projected income, revenues including grants, and they allocate that throughout the organization. Then they would tell scheduling and planning and operations how many operators they could have. Planning would use that to develop the level of service rather than using passenger needs. Then scheduling would divvy up that number among among the number of operators, divvy up the service among the number of operators they were allowed to have. The school of thought I belong to is that the scheduling or the planning and scheduling departments is the best area to decide the optimum number of operators, balancing all things. So, one observation I had when I did an analysis on a system of the first type, where the finance department allocated drivers, is that they had outrageous scheduled overtime, and ultimately their pay to platform ratio, one of the measures of operator efficiency, their pay to platform ratio was well above industry standards. Now, as a note, excessive overtime also results in fatigue, which is a safety issue. It also results in higher absenteeism, as a tired driver with a full wallet is more likely to take a, quote, sick day when it may not be really needed. The scheduler balances all of these factors, also considering the impact that the former method would have on extra board needs, and comes up with alternative solutions. How to become a scheduler? Well, first I'll mention that there are multiple training courses. I have not been through any of the training provided by any of the scheduling software vendors, so I don't know to what extent they present the basics, analysis techniques, and big picture decision making. I will say that the knowledge of basics is essential in almost everything we do. We can't use Microsoft Word to its fullest unless we understand spelling and grammar. We can't use Excel unless we understand basic mathematics. Now, how to read about scheduling? Among other things, the Transit Cooperative Research Program has published multiple reports over the years. We can go back to the American Transit Association, a predecessor of APTA, who published a scheduling manual in 1947. Much more recently, the TCRP report number 135, Controlling System Costs, the Basic and Advanced Scheduling Manual, and Contemporary Issues in Transit Scheduling, has come out. That is available on the TCRP website. It's also available through APTA. Now, the main goal of this presentation is to encourage transit employees to consider becoming schedulers, a linchpin of any transit system. A secondary goal is for the transit managers viewing this to consider how to best use the opportunity for upward mobility, job promotion, as a recruiting tool. Now, that said, as an outgrowth of the scheduling work I have done over the decades, I developed the 2-day Run Cutter course. It is designed to build skill upon skill. It is software agnostic. It uses pencil and paper methods and thinking to dispel the fear of the unknown and gradually build that skill level step by step. From an initial paper and pencil exercise in using buses efficiently, blocking, it progresses through a discussion of costing, fatigue, safety, and other factors until the final exercise is done. The final exercise is a pencil and paper run cut, which is designed to be completed successfully to see how easy it really can be once skills are built. So, being software agnostic, the skills can be used if the transit system uses pencil and paper, Excel, or any form of computer software. Building the skills, knowledge, and insights into the decision process. It also lets the schedulers then properly supervise any scheduling software. One example is from a mid-sized property I worked with many years ago that had 2 schedulers. Each scheduler was assigned 1 bus garage. One of those 2 schedulers pretty much let the computer software do the work, and that was it. The other scheduler understood scheduling, used the software as a tool, then applied her skill to improve the result. That second scheduler generated a clearly better product for both the system and the operators. So, thank you for your time and your attention. To purchase either of my books, please visit my website, runcutter.com. To contact me about the 2-day RunCutter course or my on-time performance workshop, please email me or please call me. And again, thank you for your time.